Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. I'm Rachel Great from Eventbrite, and I'm delighted to be here today with Philippe Matus to share his great advice for event websites. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can leave them in the chat box, and we'll be addressing them in the Q&A at the end of the session. So the chat box, you should see it on your screen, and just leave us any questions you have. Also, we will be sending around a recording of the talk with the slides tomorrow, so you will be getting these later, so no need to seriously jot down all of your notes. And with that, I am thrilled to introduce Philippe. Philippe, do you want to take it away?
Absolutely. A pleasure to meet everyone. I'm going to kind of set up the next 40 minutes, I thought I'd first kind of introduce myself, my experience with events. I'm actually, to kind of lay the scene, my number one thing that I'm quite good at is I'm not very much a creative mind. I'm more a numbers-driven mind. So you're not going to be getting the most creative examples on how to convert someone on your event website. Rather, I'm going to take you through the strategies that I'll usually apply to a site to convert. There's also going to be a few examples that I might throw in that are a little bit outside of the event industry, but they're principles that actually work quite well for converting people if you do have an event. A little bit of background when it comes to my experience with getting people to buy tickets on event websites. I mean, I've done everything from doing an example that we'll go through in a little bit, business conferences where there might be 500 people showing up and the ticket is maybe $500. I've done smaller events where I've done some events with the Harvard Business Review where it's, you know, the focus is really on getting 50 people in a smaller room. I've done more entertainment based events, which, for example, I'm based in London. Every other month we do philosophy events, and so we'll have 60 to maybe 120 people show up, and those are really low priced events. They might be $5 or $10, and there's kind of a thread running through, regardless of the price point or the industry that you're serving. The framework that I'm going to explain to you, it's something that can be used over and over, and it often, if you're working together with a team, you can go through these 4 layers to discover what's working, which layer might be weak, which one do you need to focus on. Now, I've spent about a decade doing a lot of tactics where I've been throwing different kinds of traffic to a website, and usually the 5 that if you were to break apart the different kinds of traffic that would go to a site, there are different. If you're for example announcing an event, you'll be looking at different kinds of traffic than if you're already have announced it and it's coming up to a month before the event. You'll be focusing on a different kind of traffic, and so I'm gonna split apart what traffic to use when. The background really on the model, a lot of you, if you are in sales, you've seen the classic movie Glengarry Glen Ross. There's quite a vulgar, but it's quite a fun listen. There's a 7-minute monologue that Alec Baldwin's got in the movie, and he takes people through a thing called AIDA. So really, how do you first get attention? Once you do have someone's attention, how do you keep their interest? Because if you're looking at converting people on a website, a lot of it is about just not being boring. And then D for desire. So once people have come to your site and they've seen the first page or the first 2 pages, you are then looking at, well, how do I get desire in them to essentially buy the ticket? And then finally, action is them buying that ticket and the measurement of it. So while this AIDA, and if you look, Google, for example, uses a very similar sales funnel. McKinsey which they're more, a higher level business strategist, they'll also use a very similar model, and you'll probably see this kind of a funnel over and over. But I want to give a little bit of a spin on AIDA because it's been around over 100 years, on how you might think about, really on just one piece of paper, when you're thinking of, okay, we've got this event and we've got to sell, let's say 100 tickets, on how to start thinking about how to strategize on how to sell those tickets. So this is how it really looks to me. And I've tested many different variations over a decade of, how to make this work. And the simplest way, again, at the attention level, if you were to split apart the traffic into just 5 buckets. So paid, so that's anything where you are paying to get attention to, it might be YouTube ads, it might be banner ads, it might be paid social ads, where people, you're essentially just paying for getting noticed. PR, so it might be that you're announcing the event and you've got a bit of press around that. So that's pretty standard. Search. So when it comes to search, it might not be relevant. SEO might not be relevant for someone that is, if you're just going to be doing one event, you probably aren't going to be looking at this traffic channel. But it's, again, if you're doing regular events and you're always driving them to the same website, that'll be an important channel. Social, so that's let's just think of social as organic social media. So if you're using, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, anywhere to announce your event. And then finally, direct. And direct, you can think about that as email. So if you're if you're quite experienced in selling events, you'll know that for a lot of industries, one of the best performing channels is a good email setup. So direct could also mean, you could also bucket into that your offline collateral that you're using to advertise an event. But the point of this page is it's oversimplified for a reason, because once you dive in and you get into the funk of the actual details and measuring traffic, you're gonna want to be able to step back and look at the whole thing from above, especially once you're starting to attach how much money you're spending on each layer. Then on interest, to completely oversimplify this, I'm thinking about interest as the first time someone hits your event website, and it's going to be that first page. It's going to be so important that there is interest there, and I'll go a little bit into how you measure if something is actually interesting. And on desire, the metric you're going to be looking at is how many times are people coming back to the site. And for a lot of events, like if you were selling an event that is, over $25, maybe it's a couple hundred, maybe you're into, especially if you're doing like high price ticket events, so it's over $1,000, you're going to notice that repeat visits consistently, you're going to be looking at maybe people need to visit the site 3 times before they buy. You might even have it, and I've had it on some projects where you're looking at over 10 visits that you'll need to get people on the site about 10 times before they buy a ticket. So that's the easiest way to understand if desire is happening, is are people coming back to your site. And then finally on action, on really, I mean, if you're doing an event, you're ultimately the whole goal is if you're spending for every pound that, every dollar that you're spending, can you at least get a little bit over $1 out? I'm going to try to avoid saying pounds. Living in the UK, it's going to probably slip in. So let's look at it this way. I'm even sucking back even more into just the attention layer. And when I'm thinking of attention, I'm going to be and we're going to go through these layers. when you start your brainstorm on how the heck are we going to get attention, think of that attention as cold, warm, and hot. And the easiest way to understand cold traffic is if you're getting traffic from, let's say, ads. So you're doing the paid channel, that paid bucket. That traffic, often it takes a lot of cold traffic to get even, let's say you send 100 people to your site, and it's cold traffic, you're maybe getting 5 or 10 people to warm up and actually revisit your site. So if someone hasn't heard of the event that you're promoting, or maybe you've got speakers there that aren't that well known, or if it's basically you're promoting an event, like sometimes I'll have a philosophy event where the speaker's rather well known, and so I know if I send traffic from that speaker's email list, that I know that's going to be warm traffic because they're already familiar with the brand, they're already familiar with the speaker. But treating traffic and trying to decide where its temperature is. So if it's cold, it just means that you're going to have to send a lot of traffic to your site to even get 10% to come back. If you're thinking, okay, let's say you have a really popular speaker, and you decide that I'm going to get attention from their followers on Twitter, for example. So let's say it's a speaker and they have 100,000 fans on Twitter. You might be using a paid promotion to get into the news feed of all the people that are following that speaker. And that, to me, that's more warm traffic because it's telling an audience that has already followed a certain person that, hey, if you're in London and you like this person, which you do because you're following them, they are going to be speaking here. And that to me is a very big distinction between how much traffic you need to get. Is it going to be cold or is it going to be warm? And hot is very hard to get traffic. But think about hot. Let's say back to this example of a speaker that's really well known. If that speaker has a newsletter that they use on a regular basis and it's well curated and they haven't abused it, if they send an email to their group, that traffic is so that because they trust the person, they're totally in with the brand. When that traffic hits your site, it's going to perform as hot traffic, and hot traffic is the easiest to convert. So if you're, let's just, and I'm a little bit of a cheerful pessimist with every strategy that I approach. Let's assume that you're going to have to start with cold traffic. So that brings it to interest. Let's say you've decided that you're going to spend money on a few YouTube ads. Maybe you're going to spend some time, or your team's going to spend some time on doing regular social media updates. And maybe you've bought one email blast, which is relevant to your audience, and maybe you have a newsletter, and so you're pushing all that traffic, and you might have, if it's a general announcement, you might be pushing people to the homepage, and I'm going to go through how to build an interesting homepage. You might be pushing if it's a specific speaker that you think people will be interested in, or a performer, or a singer, whatever your event is. You might be trying to get traffic directly to their page where it highlights their involvement in your event. And whatever way it is, whether it's the homepage or it's the page about your speaker, the key thing here is the first time they come to their site, you're going to want to make sure that it's not boring. And this part is actually, it's surprising how many times I'll get pulled into a project because maybe the ticket sales are down, or it's people are a bit nervous about what, we've got 2 months till the event and we've only sold maybe 20% of our seats. There's often, I find when I go into that scenario, that they haven't nailed who their audience is, and they haven't set up what I call and it's quite well known in the marketing industry as a USP. So your unique selling proposition, or and there's some nice variations of how this is called. But what a USP is, and it's so basic, but it's so important that you like really get this. It's one sentence. Why is it that someone would want to attend your event? And I know this sounds really basic, and we'll get to how you build that one sentence. But if you can't, if you can't articulate what the pain point is, like maybe it's that the fear of missing out. Like if it's more of a business type conference, you might want to be telling in very plain English why they should come. Maybe for network benefits. Maybe it's because it's the event that it will make you more credible to your peers. There might be many different reasons, but getting that one sentence before you worry about anything else is crucial. So this is, and you can look this up, but I recommend starting with what's called an empathy map. I think there's a great article by Copy Blogger. There's a lot of articles out there that go over how to create an empathy map. But simply, this is how I usually do it. If let's say I'm selling an event, and I'm going to use this event, it was specifically 500 seats. It cost, the price ticket range was between $400 and just over $500 per ticket. I started off by saying, okay, if we're going to try to get the unique selling proposition, I need to talk to 20 people for 30 minutes on the phone and understand why they would want to attend an event like this. So it was identified that, okay, these people, in the specific case that I'm going to give you, worked in HR, that they were kind of senior level in HR, and I need to understand what is it that they're not getting in the current events that they're attending, maybe the anxieties they might be having. And on an empathy map, and honestly, it's like it's yourself. It either is you or it's someone that someone on your team that has a really good telephone voice. You want someone engaging. If like, you just have to be real about this. If you have someone that's dry and you have to spend 30 minutes on if you need to spend 30 minutes on the phone with someone, you've got to have someone that's exciting to talk to. So what you want to do is you want to understand what kind of media each person is reading, looking to. So under the C box. Then on the say and do, you want to understand, like, who are they talking to? What do they spend regularly during the day? Who are they talking to? What is it that's influencing them? On the hear box, I like to understand what it is that peers that they're talking to are really interested in. Like, what is it that are they listening to podcasts? Is there certain radio that they're always listening to? Like, what are they digesting when it comes to media? Thinking and feeling. This part's a little bit harder, and you have to have those phone skills. But if you can understand, like, and it's called explicit and implicit. People might say that they would attend an event for a certain reason, but often the magic is in finding out what the implicit reason is. So explicitly, they might say, I want to attend this HR conference because I want to learn from the experts in the space, so I have something new to bring back to my team. But the implicit reason might be that they're actually more interested in networking because they're, potentially exploring other job options. Maybe they just want to get away from the office for a day. There could be a lot of implicit reasons that someone might not explicitly say, and it's if you have the ability to listen and really spend some time with each person, you can usually kind of feel out what the explicit reason is that you need to say and the implicit reason. And then finally, the pain and gain. So if they do come to your event, what is it that what pain are you curing by attending your event, and then get the gain, like what's the big win from attending. And what you'll find is, I'm not saying 20 people is a magic number, but I am saying that after you talk to about 20 people, you start to hear a few of the same sentences over and over, and those are the things you want to take note of. And once you have those really direct where your USP is going to go. So that's the first part, right? Is you just need to spend time with who your audience is. I mean, you can wing it if you have a small event and it's, you're only selling tickets for like $20. It's more of an entertainment-based event. Then maybe you can get away by not doing an empathy map and just doing some competitor research where you understand how a similar event is positioned. But I'm a big fan of if you're actually spending like, if the company you're representing or you're part of as the marketer is spending like $100,000 or more, like this part, you just can't skip this part. Empathy mapping. The other part of that, it's called buyer personas. And if you're a little bit of an older school marketer, you might have heard of, target market. That word target used to be very common. But because of how marketing has evolved to being to actually being more empathetic with who your audience is, how to reach them with authenticity, buyer personas have kind of become the new way of talking about who your audience is. Now, I quite like if you've done that empathy map. Here's an example of if you were doing an event for people that are interested in do-it-yourself, maybe craft type things. I quite like when I'm with like my team and we're brainstorming on how we're actually going to create content and all these things to be interesting. I like to print out either the main persona or the main three and prioritize who's the most important. So your buyer persona, it won't actually be a real person, but what it will be is you'll understand, if you've done the empathy map, you'll understand what their hobbies are, how they like spending their time, what a typical day in their life is, how much they're interested in your event, how much they might be interested in your event, and you compare it to how much time they spend on that hobby or that thing that'll help them in their job. I like to print it out, like just old school, print it out, put it on the table when everyone's brainstorming. And every time you come up with a unique selling proposition, if you're thinking about what kind of content you're going to create from the website, your first thing is, will this buyer persona find it interesting? Like that's a huge, it's just a huge important filler. And I think the symbolism of, and I've tried it in meetings where I don't print it out and we just kind of keep it in the back of our mind. But having it printed out or even on a whiteboard, and every time, you come up with whatever strategy, referencing if it's going to appeal to your buyer persona, it's like, it's so crucial. And it's so simple, but again, I wouldn't be saying this if I didn't see it so many times where people just skip past this really fundamental piece. So this is how it might look. This is the example of the HR themed conference. So we tried a bunch of different things with the website, but I just want to show you the homepage. When it says Europe's largest emotional intelligence event, it's because when we asked all these HR, when we spoke to the ideal buyer personas and spent time with them, we realized that the number one benefit that this event could bring is networking at the most recognizable event in their space. People that were interested in emotional intelligence and how could we in a USP explain that this was the place to be? And you'll notice that it isn't very sexy. It's just Europe's largest emotional intelligence event. But it's true, it is. Or it was, and it nailed the main gain that people were after, which is I want to network with people that are like me, and I want to understand why it's worth my time. there's a copywriter, and she's Canadian. Her name is Joanna Weeb, and I believe the website is Copy Hackers, if copy is quite interesting to you. But she says on a first visit, when people visit your website, like if you're taking notes, like write down, so what? And then underneath it, write, prove it. And what that means is when you get that cold traffic or that first-time visitor, you immediately, and I mean like in like 10 seconds, you have to answer, so what? So like, why am I here? Like, why is this worth my time? And then immediately right after that, if you lay a claim and it answers a so what, it's got to prove it. And you'll see on this page, we tried to load it up. So we answered the so what by, okay, this is why this event is worth your time, because you're going to network at the Europe's largest emotional intelligence event, and then proving it by getting the the people involved. So at the top we had a strip of Harvard Business Review, Sky, which is like the largest media company in Europe. It just quickly, it's those snapshots that people recognize. Oh, I've seen that logo, and then I cut it off. But along the bottom there, the main draw of the speaker was Dan Pink. So in that space, Dan Pink was the number one person that people were interested in. So that, while this isn't the prettiest website, it's quite basic. When we tested multiple different homepages, this was the one that people seemed to use. They scrolled down, they might visit one or two other pages, and then they left. So we got, like, just to be clear, there were basically no purchases on the first visit. So at that interest level, people came and then they left. So the question is, well, okay, great. Maybe we've proven interest because people are coming. They aren't bouncing immediately off of the site. They are, they're showing some interest. Maybe they're watching some videos. And to step back, like if you're using Google Analytics, that's often enough. You might combine tools like Crazy Egg or some sort of session tracking software which shows what your visitors are actually doing on your website. But even just having Google Analytics, which most of you will have on your site, you can at least see, did they come to that page, then what happened next? Did they leave or did they visit another page? So that the big question is, right, so we've got people, we seem to have interested them on their first visit, how the heck do we get them to come back? And that comes down to brand touch points. So if this is something that you're not familiar with, it's worth having a Google and having a play with what the heck are brand touch points. But all it means, like I referenced earlier on, if you are selling an event and it's above like $20, you're probably going to need people to come back. And even in the consumer world, so I don't do just events, and actually in an interesting way, I'm glad I get to experience touch points in many different industries, because what it tells me is anytime there's an expensive ticket cost, you're just going to have to get in front of people. So this is one way that you might get in front of people, and the term is, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. It's retargeting or it's remarketing. So I'm just checking the chat box. Like Yashika, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Your point about they like the website, they don't buy anything. But if you want, if your end goal is to sell the ticket, sell them through, you're going to have to get them back to the site. And you might, I know you like that point about like how do I keep them there? Like frankly, like often you can't keep people because they have a really busy. I always think everyone's got maybe 12 different tabs open in their web browser. If they're on a phone, that you just need to give it to someone in really bite-sized pieces. I find that retargeting and remarketing is basically essential. And so when you think about retargeting, let's say for this example, you have 3 sources of traffic. So, and they're all cold. You have LinkedIn traffic, maybe Twitter traffic, and a PR piece because you announced your event. That traffic comes, and maybe the key page that you want to get people to is a blog post, which it's purely an entertainment or educational page which introduces them to something that they might find interesting, and then they take off. They leave. If you have retargeting, let's say they come from Twitter, then you retarget them back on Twitter. So I can't get into it because it's a bit more of a complicated topic. But if they came from Twitter, use a Twitter remarketing pixel to provide them with additional content that they might be interested in, and don't beat them over like the head with it. Like often you can be stalkerish with remarketing or retargeting, and everyone's known that. I mean, for example, like you go to Amazon, you're looking at some shoes or whatever, and then those ads for the shoes follow you everywhere. Or you go to an event and it's like on your Facebook feed, it's on your Twitter feed, it's like it's all over YouTube. It's you're seeing banner ads everywhere you go. Like don't don't kill it. Like don't irritate people. And I mean that's, again, this is a little bit of a soft skill, but find out if you can get in front of people maybe, I don't know, a few times a week so that your event is on their mind, but you're not beating them over the head with it. Like retargeting is a really cheap way to get people back. And I find, and Lisa, I'll try to get into your comment about commitment, where people are coming back, but they're not converting into action. That traffic to get retargeting and is so much cheaper. It might be 20% the cost of your cold traffic. So if you're doing Twitter, for example, and you're paying, let's say, $1 per person to come from Twitter back to your site, when you're doing retargeting, you're often paying 20 cents, 30 cents for people to come back as opposed to your cold cost. And it might be that you get a bunch of traffic from, let's say, the PR piece. They see a blog post and it interests them. They leave, and you are remarketing on YouTube, which we've had a lot of success with using YouTube. And let's say per view that costs 15 cents. Like you can stack a lot of views, and it's not going to cost you nearly as much as getting that first time traffic. But I guess the question is like, back to yours, Lisa, is great. So we've got people back to our site more than once, but they're not buying. Like how do we get them to commit to actually getting the ticket? I'm going to try to weave this in. I'd say one of the first things is if you can if there's some sort of content that you can give away. It's called the internet marketing community will call it like a lead magnet. Let's say it's like exchange your email for maybe like a podcast or an MP3 where it's an interview with one of the key speakers, or if it's an entertainment, some sort of exclusive content that's before the event. If you can get people to email, I find email is so close to actually the sales process. Whereas social media, for example, I find it's really hard to get people directly from social to end up buying a ticket. There's a lot of different things that come into play, but if you've done, around that empathy mapping process, if you've identified what the pain point is, and you're really clear on the USP, you've also identified what the budget is. So you've done competitor research on, in this city, previous successful events that have, that attracted a similar buyer persona were priced in this kind of a price bracket. If you have the USP, you understand what they're interested in, and you have the right kind of price, and you've quantified, what kind of talent you've got at your event. So, are the speakers of interest? Are the brands, of interest that are there? And you have a competitive price, and you know it's competitive because you've seen a competitor in the last year have a sellout event or sell most of their tickets at that price point, like I find that the action naturally rolls. It naturally occurs. But if you haven't put the work into actually nailing what it is, that main benefit, like the number one benefit of attending, then it never comes about. And I would encourage you to think. It used to be even 10 years ago, you could send attention level traffic to one page, and then you could sell off of that page. Then it started becoming that you needed to send people multiple times to your site, and then you could sell. And then lately, I'd say the last 5 years, traffic best performs if you don't sell whatsoever on the first visit, and it's just about the interest. So it's just about why the event is interesting. So, maybe some educational. If you're doing it more for a B2B mindset, you might want to be selling why going to this event is going to help your career. If you're selling, if it's an event about entertainment, again, you're like you have to think about right from that USP and from the buyer persona. Like if you figure that out, this gets so much easier. So one of the things, like another thing, psychological bit, is circumstantial relevance. And a simple way of explaining that is, and I'm just going to use an example outside of events, but it's actually very applicable to events. Me and a couple mates we've got this group of marketers that help each other out. One of the guys was selling fitness at a very high level. So a fitness coach selling, like promoting himself to a very high clientele. And there was a picture of him in a suit, and he kind of had taken off the suit top and taken off the shirt, and he had really, like he's in great shape, right? Pecs, the abs, it's fantastic. But circumstantially, it wasn't relevant. And what I mean by that is, whenever would you see someone in a suit, like naturally wearing suit pants and shoes and no shirt, and it's cheesy. It doesn't work. And if you see on your event website that you don't have, if you're using stock images, you're probably alienating people because it feels cheap, or it feels forced or unnatural. And so what you want to do, and if you study advertising giants like Ogilvy, that's usually their number one filter is whatever imagery and copy I'm using, is it circumstantially relevant to what I am selling? And that means that you might not even have the flashiest images or the most polished images, but you'll actually have something real that people resonate with. So that's like one psychological bit that I have to find is really is often off, because people take a shortcut and they use stock imagery, and I'm guilty of it too. Sometimes you don't have an image, and so you just use a stock image. But just keep in mind, if you're using stock images, you're probably hurting your conversions. Another point is timing, right? Narrative and timing. So this comes back to the whole don't sell all the time. So if you get an email and you've got an email list and you are trying to sell the event, hear what I'm showing you. Think of E1 as email 1, E2, email 2, E3, and so forth. And let's say there's a week in between each email, or 3 days, right? Often when you announce something, you just don't sell that hard. You just say, here's what's going on. Or people opt in because they want to get that, that lead magnet or whatever content that is behind an email on your website. It'll come there, and it's the whole point of the email is just build interest. Email 2, build interest. At email 3, you'll have a link to buy. Maybe it's a discounted offer. Maybe it's like an early bird, whatever. If people click that link, if you're using like a MailChimp or any of the popular email services, you move them from that track down to a new track, which is really sales focused, because they've expressed interest in, I want to buy. But if they haven't clicked on that link, and you don't necessarily have to worry about this. Like whoever on your team, that is more technically minded, just get them to research and understand autoresponders. But email autoresponders, if let's say email 3 is when you introduce the sale, then if people express interest, take them down that road. But if they don't, the next email should not be about sales, right? It should be, again, about getting their interest up. And then maybe email 5, again, introduces a different sales technique. And, and again, you can put them on a different track. But this does take work. But often if you're selling an event for a few hundred people, or you think you're going to be, or your event, you're going to be selling it over and over, let's say every 3 months, you have some sort of a monthly event in place, like investing in the time to set up a few autoresponders, even if it takes like 2 days of your team to like learn it and then build it. It's like, it's such a good skill set for knowing when to sell and when not to sell. Anyway, when I'm talking about narrative, this also applies outside of email. Like I'm illustrating how email might sell, and you can go down a rabbit hole with email autoresponders, but think about it also with social. If all your stuff on social media is sell, it's boring. And your job is to keep interest and increase it in a desire. And if all you're doing is announcing your event and beating people over the head with it, they might block your feed. They're just going to tune out. But that's where the creative comes into play. You've got to be able to balance sales with entertainment and education. And usually you're doing more messaging around entertainment and education than you are doing about the sale. Finally, to wrap this, bring this full circle, and Yoshiki, you're saying like MailChimp. Honestly, it doesn't really matter which email marketing tool you've got. But I will say this, like anytime you have something publicly facing, like to convert, like things like you can pay through PayPal, and that's why like even having the Eventbrite logo on a site, like obviously this is an Eventbrite event, but I can say like from a standpoint, when you use logos and companies that people recognize and trust, that also helps get the action to happen. Because like if you're processing things with PayPal and they know that the system they're going through is secure, so you're using Eventbrite to convert it, then often people will have less of a hesitation about giving their credit card details, about actually converting. And that can be a consideration if you've got a site and there are no logos that people trust. But yeah, MailChimp, I mean, these you can use a host of tools like ActiveCampaign's quite good. Aweber used to be good. I'm not a huge fan of it, but the amount of budget that's behind MailChimp right now as a company, it means you're in safe hands if you're building a list there, and they tend to understand human behavior quite well. Just to wrap it up, I mean, this is the game. Like when you're thinking about your marketing budget, if this is the first event that you're doing, then often, like even this is, I understand this is unromantic, but my goal is if it's untested, you're trying to get to a break-even point, and that should be your goal. And really you're splitting, like when you are coming with your marketing budget, if you understand, you've done all the work about who our buyer is, what they're into and interested in, you're often going to be just splitting your budget between how are we going to get attention, so the traffic, and then how are we going to keep them interested once they hit the site, which is the website. And sometimes one or the two will be out of whack. You might be spending a lot of money on traffic, but then you're realizing that all the traffic you're getting to the site is just not converting. So you've got a conversion problem. Or you're sending the wrong kind of traffic. But you'll find that it's this balancing issue of who, and Kim, you just asked like who drives this process. Like that is usually whoever is fitting in the strategic role of the event. So it might be if you're a larger team, it might be the chief marketing officer, or if you're in a small, if it's just like a few of you together, it's going to be whoever is leading the marketing and has a bit of a financial mind, because this part is really all about the numbers. And then, because what you don't want, historically, I don't recommend having the creatives come up with the budget. The boring types, boring people like me should become like your marketing person should be figuring out how to split it. But then the marketing person needs to understand from the finance person of what is actually the break-even point. What is the maximum we can spend on marketing per attendee and still break even? And if you've done multiple events, then you're no longer at the I'm trying to just break even. You're at the how high can this profit go? So, sorry, there's Shannon. You're asking trying to reach a small targeted crowd. I think this comes back to the psychology of events. For example, and this is what's awesome living in 2017. It's been like the last maybe even 5 years where we can be so targeted about the way we spend marketing and how we get traffic that it's like for me, if you know who your buyer persona is, let's say back to that example that I used, like fans of Daniel Pink, right? And you know that's a huge draw for your audience. Like that is someone they look up to. Like a cheat sheet is using Google Trends, popping in the name of your speaker and seeing are they going up in popularity? Are they going down in popularity? You can even see it by city level. You can see it by country level. That's really interesting. Especially when you're doing big ticket events. That having the targeting on lock and not just generally blasting out and trying to get attention, that's the easiest way to burn cash. You have to have your buyer persona, then you have to understand where they hang out. So I don't care if it's they hang out on Instagram, or they hang out on a few publications, or they like to be on YouTube, or you know what, they don't even have much time for any social, so you can only reach them on email. To me, I'm unromantic about this, but it's you really want to have your targeting on lock, because the easiest way and the most common way I've seen people blow their budgets is because they haven't done their persona work, and then they're just being way too general about their event. So yeah, hopefully that, I could go in a lot of detail on that, but a question, yeah, pleasure. Melissa, you're asking specific to nonprofit fundraising events. So this is I almost steer clear, and I have in the past, steering clear of nonprofits because it's so hard. I'd say first off, never think about nonprofits as special to for-profit events. You are still fighting for the same attention that whether you're for-profit or you're a charity or whatever you might have. It's like you're playing the same game, and the same game is that everyone is attention poor. Most of us are addicted to our phones. We are our attention spans are so bad. You know this. You look at your friends. Look at all of us. I'm no better. We're toast. But if you're able to, as a nonprofit, if you're taking that charity angle, you often will have access to some really great email lists, and you'll look at, well, who is helping us? If we've got an event, if we can respect each email list, and let's say, okay, for example, let's say you as a nonprofit are okay, we are in the microfinance sector, and we've got an event, in San Francisco in microfinance, And when we ask our board, what relationships we've got, they might say, we've got this industry body we can tap with 10,000 emails on it. We've got this media partner as a nonprofit that's willing to give us some attention. You then craft and you spend that time making a very specific email for like if it's for that industry body, you will write specifically to the people that are on that list. So you don't recycle it. You do not write the same email for every email list. Like you have to spend the time in actually crafting it for each email list. But as a nonprofit, I find like email is the best way to get it rolling. And then if you do have a limited budget on traffic, you're able to spend that on remarketing. And the remarketing, honestly, like if you're going to spend on anything, like spend the money on quality retargeting and remarketing. It like dollar for dollar. From a marketing standpoint, like remarketing is a lot of action happens there. And obviously you can't spend on remarketing if you don't have people coming to your site, like if you don't have cold traffic. But as soon as you've got enough people that are relevant to coming to your site, then you've got to spend on remarketing. Like I rarely find an example when you just skip the remarketing budget. Okay, so the point on like how much if you're going to consider retargeting, how much budget to put into it. I don't know. If I have a complete marketing budget, I might put 5% in, 10% of the budget into remarketing, because it's such a cheaper channel than all the others. And then I mean, sometimes like the majority, if for example, right, on that damping thing, if you're getting a really attractive speaker, then often some of your marketing budget actually gets shifted from the speaker into the actual from the marketing into the speaker, because you're not only getting a great speaker, but they themselves have a community that they draw, and so you can justify it from a marketing budget standpoint that we're actually going to take something out of our marketing budget and push it into the actual product, the person who's speaking there, because they have such a draw. But if you realize that your event just doesn't have enough, names that draw, or some excuse that your buyer persona will be like, oh, this is the event that I got to go to, then you're just going to have to spend more on marketing, and you're also going to have to spend you're going to have to craft, ways to make it interesting once they hit your site. But if you've done the marketing, if you've done your research correctly, you understand what people are buying, then you should be able to do a decent enough job of converting people. I mean, there's a lot of these strands can go into a lot more detail. Like, I go into it like just a quick pitch on, like, I wrote a book called How to Get Your Website Noticed. And it goes through like a lot of different examples on like different traffic to use in different places. But I'll give you one last one. I think this is like a cool tip. This might fall into, George, what you're asking about the conversion techniques. When I said at the start, when I said cold, warm, or hot traffic, I often like, and this is an underutilized technique, but combine both PR and paid and social together. And this is you're gonna have to bear with me. This is a bit tactical, but it's like an underused technique that's actually really awesome. And here's what I'll explain. If you've got an event and you figured out that, okay, I know from the empathy mapping that my typical attendees hang out in, let's say, these 3 magazines or this podcast or this publication online, you'll put all your effort into getting a really good event announcement on that specific publication. That's the PR bit. Then what you're going to do is you're going to combine paid and social. So you're going to say, okay, I know that my audience likes this kind of a publication. They trust this kind of publication. I also know that, for example, they hang out on Facebook. So I'm going to take that publication, I'm going to post it on Facebook, and I'm going to put it, and the paid comes in. I'm going to promote that specific Facebook post announcing the event on this publication to whoever my ideal buyer persona is. So it might be that it's women and they're age 40 to 50 and they like these kinds of crafts, and they hang out and they're based in San Francisco or whatever it is. You target it, and instead of sending people back to your website, you're actually sending people to a PR piece, which might sound nuts because you're not even getting that first visit. But what it does is if you send people there, they will trust what a external publication says about you more than they'll trust what they read on your site. And you have to have the ability to understand for taste, what might be attractive to an audience and what they're not attracted to. But if you can say with clear eyes that PR piece that you got is interesting and it's on a publication that your audience trusts, then I've often found using social and paid to get people to that PR piece. Although a lot of times people come to the PR piece and they won't even click through to go to your site, I found that there's this crazy correlation between getting, let's say, 5,000 people on that PR piece and then watching the traffic over the next 3 days or so, because people will then hit Google the event name, and that sort of social comes in. So like you want to at least rank your website for the name of your event, and that traffic is so good. Like it's some of the most potent traffic, and it's almost the same quality level of the type of traffic I've had from email lists where the audience really trusts. Like I've seen on Harvard Business Review when working with them, when I saw like an event go out through their list, it was like the most potent, valuable traffic ever, and I think that's because they had built an effective relationship with their audience, and therefore when that traffic came back to the site, it was warm, it was often hot, and the trust was there, and then the site just helped coax them along to actually getting a ticket. So your traffic, cold, warm, or hot, is just going to perform different, and you're gonna want to pull back. Sorry. Last thing here, if I can sneak it in here, attractive USPs for corporate events for prospective clients. So it's like strongly worded. Okay, nothing's right now coming to mind, but I will say this is almost in every instance when you think about a USP, like clarity over cleverness is usually the right move. Like you might have someone that's quite a wordsmith and you want to be funny or creative with whatever your USP is. But honestly, like pretty much every time I will prefer that we get in very simple jargon-free English what this event is about and what the main benefit of it is. And you might be tapping the explicit or the implicit offer, but usually plain English wins over complex English like almost every single time. And especially when you try to be clever or funny or whatever, it's like it rarely works. Like just don't bother. Like find out the number one draw that your event's going to have and run with it. But again, for USBs, seriously, Copy Blogger's good, but I'm a real fan of this Canadian crew, Joanna Wiebe and Copy Hackers are doing when it comes to like understanding how to craft a USB. So, yeah, hopefully that'll lead you down an effective rabbit hole. But yeah, thanks. I think that's all the time we've got. I appreciate everyone's attention.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. And if you'd like any more information, you can follow up with Philippe or find out more about all things event website conversion and more on the Eventbrite blog. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.